Hi, I am Shay Drew. I'm 33 and I am a student who is also employed full time and is an adult. I wanted to start this channel, a vulgar display of the working class, to kind of document my journey as an adult student. Although it is a little bit late, I have about 6 months left in my bachelor's program, and in June I plan to graduate with my bachelor's of psychology, bachelor's in science, and sorry, bachelor's of science in psychology with an emphasis in sports and performance psychology. That's a mouthful. Um, that's a lot. Despite that, though, I do plan to eventually go back to school, so it'll just be a little bit of a break, and it'll still be about that. Um, I have worked I've had a few different careers, but it two main industries. So I started kind of in the service industry after my high school job, working in the newspaper office, addressing newspapers, which was so fun. But for most of my working life, I've worked in the service industry. I have bartended, waited tables in managed restaurants, and I actually plan to do that for the rest of my life. And at one point, I realized that my body wasn't really gonna be up to that, as well as my mental health wasn't really going to be up to that, because although I was pretty good at my job, it was also really stressful. So um, when COVID-19 happened and I was furloughed from my server job, I applied at one of the local grocery stores and got hired, and didn't really expect to love it as much as I did, but it actually led to a complete career change. When the restaurants opened back up in Texas, I worked both jobs for a little while and ultimately decided that I loved my grocery store job a lot more. And it's definitely been a great move in my life. It's led to getting insurance, getting diagnosed with a rare disease, getting my health back on track, which also has led to weight loss. It led to having my ADHD diagnosed finally. Although I've known for a long time that I had it, I never really wanted to go anywhere with that until I started struggling with school, because focus is hard, and it's been close to 4 years. It'll be 4 years since I started in April, and um, just over 4 years when I graduate in June. And that's 4 years taking off roughly 3 months for getting married and having my honeymoon, planning my wedding and stuff, and then the few breaks that I've taken between classes to get a little bit of a breather here and there. Um, after after I get my bachelor's degree, I do plan to go ahead and get my teaching certification and transition from my current job into a teaching position. And from there, I'll stay on a little bit of a break, but I do plan to go back to school and get my master's and my doctorate in either clinical or counseling psychology. At which point, I'd like to begin working with adolescents, like teenagers, in either a school setting or a private practice setting. I'm not sure yet what I want to do, but I do want to be doing therapy and counseling, or just working directly with them, because that's kind of one of the things that helped me when I was that age. I also want to be a foster parent, and I want to focus on the same age group, adolescent age, like probably 14, 15 and up, just because I'm not comfortable around small children. I don't think that I am the best person to be responsible for a small child during the formative years of their lives. That kind of terrifies me, and I think that I have a better skill set for working with adolescents and teenagers, and kind of being able to work better in those situations. All of this kind of stems from, I guess, my background with mental health issues and my childhood and stuff. I didn't have a horrible childhood. I wasn't living in extreme poverty, and like it wasn't like it really wasn't as bad, I guess, as some people have it. We were like relatively poor, and there was like definitely all of the issues that were pretty much a lot more prevalent in the 90s and stuff, but there were certain traumas in my childhood that led to having PTSD and being depressed from a very young age, like basically for as long as I can remember. I've always been depressed, or I've struggled with waves of depression on a regular basis. And the first thing was that when I was 3 years old, my youngest brother died. Um, and then I went to live with my aunt for a while, and ended up eventually moving back with my parents and my other brothers. I'm not sure like exactly what the time frame was. It couldn't have been more than a year. It probably wasn't even quite a year. But going back when my family moved to the Austin area from the Lubbock area, and then when I was around 7, we ended up moving in with my grandparents, and from that point, it transitioned from like living with my grandparents because my parents were needing a little bit of help, to living with my grandparents because my grandparents couldn't live on their own anymore. So, um, definitely was an interesting life being in a house with 7 people and one bathroom, and like three built on bedrooms. I think eventually it was 2 extra bedrooms that were built onto the house, but at one point there were 3 or 4. So it was definitely an interesting childhood. But I didn't necessarily receive the proper mental health help that I needed because of the stigma with mental health in the 90s. My parents being just trusting of the whole system because of knowing people who um, were in their like late teens, early 20s, and more depressed and suicidal because of being on antidepressants. And in the long run, I'm very grateful that I didn't go on medication or get diagnosed with stuff at a young age, simply because I feel like my coping skills would not be quite as good as they are if that were the case. But growing up, I had some self harm issues. I struggled with suicidal ideation. I still struggle with suicidal ideation. I think that I will always struggle with suicidal ideation. It's simply just always going to be there. I call it being passively suicidal, and that it's stronger some days than other days, but despite the fact that the urge is always going to be there to a varying degree, it's just something that I know that I'm not going to do because of my responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is being alive for certain people. So, and for myself, because I know that I like love life when it's awesome and when my head is doing well. And I think that I am meant to do some really great things in this world. So I when I self-harmed as a teenager, I was able to get through that by writing. I've written poetry for over 20 years now, but I really started channeling a lot of that emotion into my writing when I was in my mid-teens to late teens. And over the years it's kind of trickled off a little bit, and recently I've started writing a lot more again. But I've always been hesitant to share it. There are cases where I will share it by letting other people read it, but I would like to step out of my comfort zone and actually share it verbally, which is kind of terrifying. But I I do want to I want to do more with what I've written, and I want to um, get to the point where I'm comfortable doing that, where I feel like I can maybe go to a slam poetry night and perform it, or like start a band or whatever. Not necessarily singing, because unless it's like grunge or some 90s shit, my voice is not the greatest. I feel like it's kind of gravelly, but at the same time, that could just be the way it sounds in my head. Um, but yeah, so definitely like we've touched on quite a few things that this channel will be about. The last thing is a bit of an odd subject. So I actually haven't mentioned, but I'm married. I got married in October of 2020, and I'd been dating my husband for a couple years, a little over 2 years before we got married. Since shortly after I moved here in 2018, we had actually been hanging out for a few months, and we finally decided to start dating, which is a fun story because I've definitely had a lot of experience being burned in the past, and by a lot, I mean the two times that I have, three times that I had previously gotten involved with somebody that I worked with. It definitely did not end so well, and it was not very comfortable at work. And so when we started hanging out, I was very, very adamant that I wouldn't date anybody that I was working with again. And it was definitely convincing enough that I had to ask him out because he was afraid to ask me out. But um, yeah, so interesting relationship, but it gets more interesting because I am bisexual and polyamorous, and my husband is straight and monogamous and very much not polyamorous. Um, and it's definitely been a journey. It was a decision that I made willingly because I feel like he's my other half and I love him, and I think that I can make those kinds of sacrifices because I I'm happy with him. I know that relationships are about give and take. They're about compromise and sacrifice. So obviously over the years, like, we'll end up finding different ways to maintain this balance and whatever. But it's a journey, and it's never going to be easy, but I guess not a lot of things in life are super easy. So, like, I guess all in all, we've covered quite a bit, but this channel is going to be about me. A Sorry, I'm just struggling with my lighting. I'll get better at this. I've recorded this video several times. I'm not going to record it again. Um so I'm going to I'm going to work on the skills and work on my lighting because I have my light on, but it's not quite bright enough without opening my window, and the window opens a fucking can of worms. Anyway, back on track because I derailed. Um, yeah, adult student who is working full time, me, uh, writing poetry, planning to save the foster children, planning to counsel all of the troubled youth, and share my mental health journey and share my poetry and share my journey as a bisexual polyamorous woman married to a heterosexual monogamous man. It's going to be hopefully a fun journey, and if you're gonna stick around after this video, thank you.